Welcome. If you can come and take a seat, we'd like to get started. We shoot for 5 minutes late, but we're a little further than that this time. I'm Debra Polski. I'm the Executive Director of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, and we are so happy to have you here in this third installment of the Jim Schwartz Annual Lecture Series. The lecture series has been going on for well over 10 years. The Historical Society's been around for 49 years. Next year's our 50th anniversary. And the lecture series is designed to bring information and awareness of different aspects of Jewish and Southern history and culture. In 2019, we renamed our series to honor Jim Schwartz of blessed memory, the 2012-2016 president of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Jim was a wonderful president. He focused on finances, getting us where we were supposed to be as a small agency. He focused on our need to expand the archive and expand the space for volunteers so that we could actually make more use of what's hiding in the treasures that are hiding in our archive. He was a mentor and a good friend and a tremendously hard worker. He was the first one to get out there and make a phone call to try and raise money. And we are thrilled to have this opportunity to honor him with this annual series of lectures. We are proud tonight to present you with Celebrating Jewish Dallas Across the Generations. And it will be moderated by Andrea Weinstein, also a past president of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society and pretty nearly everything else, and a community leader who, if you're not related to her, you've probably heard of her. And so she's going to get our program started.
Thank you, Deborah. I want to welcome all of you here this evening. And my father of blessed memory, he always used to start something with a joke. So I thought in his honor, I would start with a joke, since this is about history. So Joseph Telushkin, of great fame, wrote a book about Jewish humor. And there's a story in that book that's one of my favorites, and you've probably heard it, but it's so funny that it's always worth repeating. So in England, there's this ceremony, as you know, or may not know, that one gets knighted if one has done enough. And there's this lovely Jewish man who lives in England, and the Queen wants to honor him because of all of his good deeds. And so he is told what he needs to say when the Queen knights him. You know, she takes the thing and she goes on each shoulder like this. And so he practices, and he practices, and he practices. He's ready, he's ready. So he's in all of this regalia, and he goes before the Queen, and he kneels. And she says something to him, and he is supposed to respond. And he has this total memory lapse. He cannot remember what it is he's supposed to say. And so thinking quickly, he says, Manish Tana halayla hazeh. And the Queen looks at her consort and says, why is this night different from all other nights? So what I will say to you is that why is this night different from all other nights? Because we have some wonderful knights sitting at this table who are going to regale us with their memories and their stories and who they are and why they are here this evening. So without further ado, I'd like for you to welcome our panelists this evening, and we will get started right away with asking them in about 30 seconds to a minute tell our audience who you are and what you do and how long your family has been in Dallas, or who came first, whichever the case may be. And Joe, I'm going to start with you.
All righty. My name is Joe Shackman, and I was born in Dallas 77 years ago, and both my mother and father were born in Dallas, and most of the family has were here in Dallas before 1900. And in fact, I have a great-grandfather whose name is on a obelisk on Dolphin Road, Sheriff Israel Cemetery, and they only talked about him in the name of Old Man Shackman, but his name was Jake, and he was the treasurer of the Romanian-Hungarian Benevolent Society in 1906. So we've been here a long time, and my cousin Fonda Arbetter has found our grandmother's grandfather out at on Dolphin Road also. So I grew up in Dallas, and this is the only place to live. Thank you.
Hi, I'm May Stevel. I'm a native Dallasite, as was my father, who was born here in 1901 on the site of what is now the Dallas City Hall. His father came to Dallas from Germany in the late around 1870. His name was Saul Loeb, and he was active in the Hebrew Benevolent Society, which was the forerunner of Temple Emmanuel. My mother, Helen Loeb, and her mother were born in Palestine, Texas, and moved here in 1920. My grandfather, my mother's father, Hyman Pearlstone, was born in Buffalo, Texas, as was his father, Barney. And my great-great-grandfather, Pearlstone, was born in New York and moved to Waco in the 1800s to work with the Sanger family. Both my parents graduated from Forest Avenue High. I grew up in University Park and attended the Highland Park schools. I'm retired from law firm management and HR consulting. I'm active at Temple Emmanuel, currently chairing the Archives Committee. And I'm active in NCJW and the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. At the moment, I'm also very busy registering voters.
So my name is David Goldman. I was born in 1965. My family arrived in the state of Texas in Dallas in 1911. My grandfather immigrated from Russia up through Galveston, Texas. Rosenberg Library, Devorah Rubin, where you can go and find family records. He brought his family here, his brothers, sisters, and his parents, so I've got 2 of my 3 children here. They're 5th generation now in Dallas, Texas. Fortunate to meet my wife at her one and only Jewish Federation singles event. Thank you. Oak Cliff native.
Well, no,
Not really, but close it up.
I'm Liz Leaner. My maiden name is Meyer. I'm 3rd generation Dallasite. And I don't have an exact year, but I know that my great-grandfather came in the early 1900s. He started a food business. He had a push cart and a bell, and he would go up and down the streets in Highland Park and sell produce. And from that, the family started a grocery business in Oak Cliff, and my father grew up in Oak Cliff. And then my mother didn't grow up she grew up in Texas, but she moved here as like elementary school age. And I am a public school kid. I went all through public school here, Preston Hollow, E.D. Walker, and Hillcrest. Grew up at Sheriff Israel. I was very active in BBYO in high school. I was in Jenny Shep's BBG, and I was a nom for Levi Eshkol, AZA, neither of which are in existence anymore. And I been a volunteer for the last about 18 years in the Dallas community. Before that, I worked in telecom at Ericsson with Stuart Roosevelt for a long time. And I'm married, and I have 3 children.
I am Brad Schwab, third generation Dallasite. I grew up at the southwest corner of Hillcrest and Campbell until I was 4, and then moved to the northeast corner of Hillcrest and Campbell, and went away to school briefly, then moved really far north, all the way to Collin County at Meandering Way in McAllen. Moved even further north, moved to Coit and Frankfurt, had my second house there. Moved north of Frankfurt, all the way to Hillcrest and Frankfurt, had my third house there. And then because I just felt I was really too far away, moved back to the same house I was in when I was 4. So, traveled a lot in my years here. Third generation Dallasite. My mother is from here. My grandmother's from here. Since my mother's here tonight, I don't know, when did they come here? I don't know. Before 1924, I don't know when the Free family got here, but my grandmother was one of the Frees, and she lost her freedom when she got married. But she always liked to tell people that. But yeah, I have wife, 2 kids. Family has sunny land outdoor living here in Dallas and Frisco.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Weinstein, and I am a 4th generation Dallas Jew, courtesy of this one right here. I would say I've got pretty deep roots here in Dallas and in the Jewish community. Being a 4th generation Jew here, I've gone to grow up at a lot of the places that my grandparents and great-grandparents have built for me or for this community. So I went to Levine growing up. I got bat mitzvahed at Sheriff. Went to Yavna then for my high school. So the Dallas Jewish community has played a really big role in my life, and even doing gymnastics here at the JCC. So first time going into college was really my first time going into the Jewish community outside of Dallas and seeing what that was like. So yeah.
Thank you all. And so what we are going to do is pose some questions to our panelists.
Move your button microphone.
We're going to pose some questions to our panelists. And you have cards on your seats, and we'll have some time reserved for a little Q&A. So if you have a question, please write it on the card, and Debra will be happy to take those from you so we can answer them, hopefully, to your satisfaction. So, what memory of your youth, of growing up here, resonates with you? And Elizabeth, let's start with you this time.
All right, so I would say probably my biggest memory is I grew up with almost all of my immediate and close family, probably within almost walking distance from my house here in Dallas. So Shabbat dinners were something that we just always did together, and I wouldn't say it was the most religious thing, but it was how our family got together. We had fun, and whether it was putting on fashion shows or just spending time together, it was the way my family connected and always had that time together that I loved, with multiple generations there, which was really great. So that's what my family said. I would say also just, again, going to Levine, I've had the same friends since I was 3 years old, which is really great growing up together, and they're still some of my closest friends today. So just all the memories, it's hard to call out one, but between being so close to my family and my friends here and being able to come back and have that all still intact has really been great.
So we got the questions a week ago, and I still have no idea how I'm going to answer this question. I guess my youth, as far as Jewishly, wouldn't even really be in Dallas. It'd be more about 3 hours west of here in Abilene. So, although we went to Sheriff, my grandfather was the lay rabbi in Abilene at Temple Mitzvah. The Historical Society wrote about it a couple years ago. So, my memories were there going to, a little tiny town synagogue where everybody knew each other's name and everybody got to participate. It was just a different, my family's at Onsite now, we were at Sheriff, and while there's many positives of being in a large synagogue, there's something kind of nice of being at a, almost like a one-room church, except it's a synagogue in a small town in Texas. Just a different experience, and always enjoyed that for high holidays, and just, that'd be my dream one day, to have a little synagogue in a small town somewhere, and just kind of that, the atmosphere with the spaghetti dinner on Sunday night, but it'd be a synagogue instead of a church.
No, because I went to public school, I had friends that were both Jewish and non-Jewish, and I would say that I never ever experienced one anti-Semitic incident growing up here. Sometimes on Sundays I would go to church with my friends, and sometimes they would come to share with Israel with me on Saturdays, and it was a very, very nice coexistence between all of us. And I remember going biking with friends for hours and hours. Of course, there were no cell phones back then. I had 2 quarters in my pocket in case I needed to stop at Burger King and use their payphone and call my mom. And Dallas seemed smaller then. I know it probably seemed even smaller your generation, but it seemed like we were all sort of in the same geographic area. And that seemed a very nice thing growing up to have that.
So as Dallas has grown a lot over the past 55 years, or 54 that I've been here, as Liz just said, Dallas was really small growing up. I was fortunate to grow up on a block with 5 families from Sheriff Israel. As each one got married, we had a block party, which was a progressive dinner on the street. Macy, I got you. But then when I get beyond just our immediate block, I go down to the cul-de-sac at the end of the street, and there were 2 families that we were friends with from Temple Emmanuel. One of those families had a cousin just a quarter mile down the street on North Haven. My family, we grew up with first cousins a quarter mile down on North Haven. So as large as the city was, I think there were pockets within Dallas, at least as I experienced it, where we had Jewish friends. I was speaking, I didn't realize the Weinsteins and Sweets, Weinbergs, they still live next door to one another. And that's throughout the entire city. As big as the city was, it became very small within the friendship circles that we had.
Well, growing up in University Park, there were actually a lot of Jewish families at the time I grew up there, and in Highland Park, because that's where people from South Dallas moved. As they were beginning to leave South Dallas, they came to Highland Park and University Park. I just remember my youth as being such a carefree time, riding my bike wherever I wanted to go, walking wherever I wanted to go. I grew up on the corner of Lover's Lane and Turtle Creek, so walking to the movies in Snyder Plaza or taking the bus down to the village. Playing outside with friends, going to their homes, nobody worried about anything. It was a way of life that I'm afraid is gone forever. I loved going away to summer camp. I went down to camp in Hunt, Texas, and I loved taking family vacations. And Liz brought up something about anti-Semitism. I didn't face it directly in the Highland Park schools, but I always had a lot of non-Jewish friends, and I remember them apologizing to me because I couldn't go to junior cotillion at the Dallas Country Club or something, and they felt badly about that, so they were watching out for me.
In the Jewish way, I remember the thing that was, 2 things were most important. I'll go way back. At one time, the different synagogues didn't have their own Hebrew school. They had something called United Hebrew Schools. And you met people from all over Dallas and in many different Jewish communities and different people. And also, AZA and BBG was very important in my life growing up. And that was another situation where people were there from all synagogues, temples, and whatever. And we were all together in AZA and BBG. And it really was great and nice, and a real place where you could really feel that you knew all members of the community.
Thank you. All right, this is probably maybe somewhat repetitive in a way, but were you proud of being a Dallasite? And has that changed over time? Let's see, Brad?
I am watching the live, so this is being live streamed right now, so there actually is a comment, so I was curious. Everybody watching on the live stream right now, there's actually 8 people out there watching it. So I was checking in on that. And what's the question? Because I wasn't
Okay, the
listening.
question is, were you proud of being a Dallasite? And has that changed over time?
No, I mean, I'm definitely not. I actually have a room at my house. I mean, it's my Texas room. But there's a lot of Dallas stuff in there also. I mean, I have Dallas memorabilia, Dallas books, Texas stuff, Americana stuff. I'm definitely definitely proud of being from Dallas. I enjoy it, and I hope my family stays here and my kids and everything. It's kind of nice to be somewhere forever, and especially a part of the Jewish community, knowing people. So back when I was in college, I was in a business fraternity, which I don't drink, so I joined a business fraternity thinking that it'd beat all business stuff. The difference between a business fraternity and regular fraternity is regular one drinks at the frat house, they just drink at other people's houses. But I met somebody there, and we're talking, and she's like, "You're Jewish?" I know a Jewish person, and of course, apparently all Jewish people must know each other because we have meetings and stuff, and sure enough, I knew all the people she mentioned. Yeah, I mean, it's nice having the connections and you meet people. My roommate was Allie Stower, who lived with me for a couple of years. I knew Sherry from BBYO. Her grandfather dated my grandmother back when they went to Forks Avenue High School together. So it's just little things like that that make it nice to have the long-term connection.
Oh, my turn. Yes, I guess I've always been proud. I didn't really think about it until I went to college and I started meeting all these people from Houston. And then I was like, we had this little rivalry thing going. I have no idea why, but I always stuck up for Dallas. One thing that I would say that I'm proud of in Dallas is I grew up in a kosher home. And when I was a child, we could not keep one kosher restaurant in business here. They go up, they go down, they go out of business pretty quick. But now you look at the Jewish community, the observant community, there's a lot of kosher restaurants, kosher caterers, kosher grocery stores, and so that's been a big positive change, in my opinion, in the community here.
So other than the lack of success in our professional sports franchises, at least recent successes, I'm definitely, proud to grow up in Dallas. And I think it's been said up here, the number of opportunities for people to get involved Jewishly has just exploded. When I was growing up, there was Shereth Israel, there's Tiferet Israel, there was Temple Emmanuel, Temple Shalom, and I said Shereth. And that was it. That was it. Beth Torah, and now, if people want to get involved, however they want to get involved, there's an opportunity available. If they don't find an opportunity, they really don't want to get involved. There's so many options available for us to do in Dallas and the greater Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
I've always been very proud of being a Dallasite. I have lived away a couple of times. I lived in, I went east to school, and so I was a rarity. People were asking me if I had neighbors living close by, because they had never met a Texan before, and I also lived in San Diego for 18 years, but I have always been a Dallasite no matter where I lived, and so speaking of sports, when I lived in San Diego and the Cowboys were doing so great and went through 2 Super Bowls, I had Super Bowl parties there, and people just thought that, why is she having a party for, the Dallas Cowboys? So I kind of never got over being a Dallasite. One of the things you had mentioned or had asked on the questionnaire was, has my being proud, has that changed over time? I would say the only way it's changed is I'm not proud of our homeless problem, and I'm not proud of our status nationwide in the educational field.
I love being a Dallasite and would not consider really living anywhere else. And it's been a great 77 years, and I've just enjoyed it and proud to be and be surrounded by, especially my children and grandchildren who all happen to live here also. So the best thing I can say about Dallas is this is our home, and it's really important to us.
So I've definitely always been proud of being a Dallasite. Again, it helped that I'd had so many roots here. It was a place that I was proud to grow up in and be a part of. But it wasn't honestly something I really thought that much about growing up. It was just kind of who I was and where I was from. And I think the first time I really got that sense of pride is I went to sleepaway camp in Wisconsin at Camp Interlochen that's run through the JCC there. And there's actually a decent amount of us from Dallas that go there every summer, or went there every summer. And we were always considered the Dallas kids. Like, it was known at the camp that we were the kids from Dallas, and everybody wanted to come visit Dallas and viewed it as a totally different place than Milwaukee and anywhere else in Wisconsin. So it's kind of the sense of pride of like, yeah, we're the kids from Dallas, we have our Dallas shirts on, you know, repping our different sports teams. So it was really interesting there that it was the first time I was like, yeah, I'm from Dallas and I'm different from everybody else at that camp. And then the other time in my life where I really had a sense of pride as well was when I went to college. I went to Emory in Atlanta, which seems like it would be a southern school and a lot of people from Texas and Georgia, but it is mostly everybody from Long Island and New Jersey. And so when I went into the sorority, AE Phi, I realized I was one of 2 Texans in the entire sorority. And they always talk about how they aren't all from Long Island, they aren't all from New Jersey, there really is diversity, and they would say, look, we've got Elizabeth, she's from Dallas. So it was really interesting there to see that I stood out because I was from Dallas even though I was in the South. And then also it was interesting because growing up in Dallas, I didn't really think much of it being any different, the Jewish life here versus anywhere else. But when I went to school with all my friends from Long Island and New Jersey, where maybe they didn't go to Jewish day school, but certainly everybody knew every single Friday was Shabbat and things like that, that hadn't even crossed my mind that, you know, it's just how different it was the way they grew up versus how we grew up is a little different. But yet there was still that sense of pride in being Jewish, and, you know, we connected over that. But it was the first time that I noticed, growing up, it was probably a little bit different in Dallas than it is there, in the sense that, you know, most of my life I've been in the majority as the Jewish person, just between Jewish day school and even going to Emory, which was pretty much a Jewish day school. Where I work now, I work at the Richards Group, and I think it's the first time that I'm actually not in the majority as being a Jewish person. And the first time I really realized that was when we were getting emails and people were making comments about last names or whatnot. And they were shocked that I was Jewish. And I said, my last name's Weinstein, of course I'm Jewish. And they were completely shocked and had no idea that that was even a thing. So it's been very interesting to see these different stages of my life. There's still that sense of pride and a sense of pride in being from Dallas and being a Jew from Dallas, but it's manifested itself in different ways through different times in my life.
This is an interesting question. I know that you've had the questions before, and you've answered some of the part of this, but I want to see if you want to elaborate on it. At what point in your development did you begin to see yourself as part of the Jewish community? And this time, I'm going to start with David.
Since growing up, I had a couple of, I think, grounding and good experiences as a Dallas Jew. One was Hebrew school used to be Monday, Wednesday, and Shabbat.
Yes, that was for you.
At Sheriff, yes. So, A, that was, a big change to today. I've got, I think, at least 3 Eagle Scouts in this room. We used to have a Jewish scout troop at Temple Emmanuel. And then something that was really key for me was back in 1981, I went on the Israel Teen Tour, which Jack Malad led, and it looks like there's a few head shaking. They've had either others like Liz, maybe we experienced it. I see Jeff over there, maybe he went on it. Who, Joe? Joe as well, yes. But that was really a fantastic, and that brought, and Joe, he was talking about it, that brought, Jews from all over the city, different synagogues, temples all over. 45 of us went, I think, the year that I went, and that was really a fantastic experience. Allowed me to meet other people from other parts of the city that I really didn't know, and fantastic introduction to Israel, and has always played a critical role for me in my life.
Oh, me? Okay. Yeah, so I always consider myself part of the Dallas community. It's evolved over time. Like David, I was at Sheriff Israel all the way. I went all the way through 12th grade to Sunday school, or whatever we used to call it back then. Sunday school, even though we were Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. And I was in BBYO, and I went on the Israel trip with Jack Malad as well. BBYO was also another vehicle to meet kids from other parts of the city. And then I had this sort of lull period where I got married and started working and had kids. And then when my kids started at Akiba for day school, I began getting a little bit involved there. It was when I stopped working, when my youngest child was born. That's when I really got involved. And I've been on a lot of boards in the city. So I feel like I know a lot of the agencies pretty well, so I feel lucky in that regard that I've had those opportunities.
I was involved in BBYO in high school, and I was in Brandeis and a nom for Weinstein. But I guess I didn't really get involved, so I went away for 2.5 years to Arizona. Andrea helped me write the essays, thank you very much. But ended up coming back to North Texas. Things didn't work out there for various reasons. And figured I was at North Texas, I was going to be there maybe a semester, because I really didn't want to be there, but I applied and I had a place to go after I came home. And I remember somebody telling me that everybody says they're only going to stay in North Texas for a semester and they get stuck there. And then, sure enough, I got stuck there, and got involved. At the time was the Jewish Students Organization. It was not an official Hillel Association yet, so I was on the, went to an event, met some people, found out the Hillel only had $32 to their name. Now, we were just affiliating with National at that point, or the UNT was, but we didn't have everything finalized yet. So I got involved. I went to my grandmother. I said, I need some money. She called her bingo guy from JWI. She got us a bunch of money. And it really was our seed money for what became UNT Hillel up there. I ended up being president for 2 terms. I got involved with the regional board, was involved with the federation, and the big group that gives money, I can't do it, but the allocations people, got involved in the community there, ended up being the adult board chair, then the past thing, then I was off, then I was back on again. They honored me a couple years ago for my time there. And speaking of that, Hillel does have a fundraiser this April at Temple Shalom, honoring J.R. Vedder and Mark Perlstein. Tickets are now on sale. But I don't know, man, getting involved with UNT Hillel, I've been involved with it pretty much for almost 20 years. I finally got off the board this year. The people I met from there, I'm still friends with today, or I met people through that. It got me involved in other things. My connections with there got me to be a BBYO advisor. I got to raise all the Rosenfield's kids, and then my connections there got me a bowling league. I got to go bowling with Farah. And so, I mean, it kind of led off to everything else. I mean, I've been involved, now I'm really not much involved anymore now. I say all our money just goes to Levine at this point, but that's my involvement, I guess. But at least so recently, I mean, that was kind of the turning point that got me involved in the Jewish community here locally.
So for me, the question is, when did you first really feel part of the community? I would say probably the day I was born. I don't remember it closely, but coming into the family that I know I have today, once you were born into it, you are a part of the Jewish community, and it's something that you're raised with, and it's kind of just instilled in you through the different generations. So it was just, again, kind of something that fell into my lap a little bit, but it was something that I embraced going again to Levine and Yavna, being a part of BBYO, participating in all those different things and getting involved through a lot of just what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. I think one of my favorite times of getting involved was at Jewish Day School, so at Levine, we had certain plays or projects we would always do, but with my creativity, we somehow came up with the idea that 2 of my friends were going to get married for fun, and of course we then turned it into a learning opportunity. So how would 2 people in the Jewish community get married, and we became a mock Jewish wedding. So playing with our rabbis at the time at the school or whatnot, it was just always part of my life of coming up with fun and interesting ways to bring Judaism into my life and into others. So really I always have felt like a part of the community here, and especially Judaism. And then when I went to college too, it was one of the first ways in a new place that I was able to connect with people there and get involved on campus.
I was seemingly always involved in the Jewish community. Interesting, I never lived in South Dallas. All my friends always want to talk about, I never lived there. I lived in Preston Hollow, and I went to Preston Hollow Elementary and 5 years at Hillcrest High School. So we lived out there, and then when people started leaving about when I was in the 4th, 5th, or 6th grade, that's when many people left South Dallas and moved north. And before then, most of my friends from school and all were not Jewish, but we were always in the Jewish community. I had, my only claim to fame is I had the last bar mitzvah at the old shul of Shereth Israel. So been around a long time, and another thing, we still have reunions at least once a year for guys my age that were in Reuben Kaplan AZA, and that just goes to show what, you know, people that are friends of yours, you know, go on through many, many years and are still friends.
Well, I don't remember not being Jewish. I was born at, into Temple Emmanuel. My parents had been, active there as young adults and continued on through their lifetimes. But every year, my mother and I, my grandmother, went to the mother-daughter luncheon that they used to have at Temple Emmanuel on South Boulevard. And when I was somewhere around 4 to 6 years old, they had me stand on a chair and give the toast to the grandmothers. And I actually remember that. That's probably my first memory of being involved at Temple Emmanuel. But of course I was confirmed there and went to Sunday school, and I remember the bus that came into, I don't know where it started, but I know in University Park it picked us up and took us to South Dallas to Sunday school, which happened for many years, and actually my entire Sunday school life, and I was confirmed there at the temple on South Boulevard.
The next question is an interesting one that may or may not have had an effect, but nonetheless, when many of us were in, especially in public school during our lives, we often experienced in some way what was at that time called the Christmas Hanukkah dilemma. And the question we have is, how did that manifest itself with you or your family, if indeed it did? Let's see, May, let's start with you this time.
Well, my family had the perfect answer to the December dilemma. We had a Christmas tree burning lit in the living room, and we lit the Hanukkah candles in breakfast room. Now, we were not so out of the ordinary among Reformed Jews at that time. It had no religious significance at all. It was strictly for the season, but my dad's birthday was on Christmas Day, and so it kind of was tied into that. But the year, I do have a funny story to tell. The year of my confirmation, Rabbi Olin's family during December had gone back up to the East Coast where he had been from, and he was alone, and my parents, who were very good friends of his, invited him to dinner, and I nearly freaked out because it was my confirmation year. I said to my mother, I'm going to be kicked out of Sunday school, I'll never be confirmed. He's going to walk in the house, he's going to see the Christmas tree. So when she answered the door, I was hiding somewhere. And she said, Levi May is just, panicked about your being here and seeing this Christmas tree. And he said, I won't look at it.
He was great.
Oh, my turn? Oh, I'm sorry, wow. Okay, so December dilemma, definitely not something I ever experienced. I know the words to probably every Christmas carol that have ever been written in English because I was in public school, and for 7 years at Preston Hollow we had the holiday program. And whereas many of my friends, Jewish friends, were not allowed to sing the Christmas songs, my parents, who kept a kosher home, said, have at it. So I learned all the words, and we sang 30 Christmas songs and 2 Hanukkah songs. And they're a lot. And on a more personal note, I had a very good friend, I'm still very good friends with her, whose father was a Lutheran minister. So I would go to her house and trim the Christmas tree, and she would come to our house and eat latkes. So actually it was really nice to see her.
So my parents are in the room. So people often ask me if my parents raised me badly or something. So since they're here, I'll answer that question. My mother was the room mother, and she did Hanukkah things at school, and we lit candles at our house and did Hanukkah as a family and all that stuff. But Christmas is probably my favorite holiday, so it's not their fault because I was raised correctly. But I mean, I love the whole concept of Christmas. If you take the whole religious part, which really, Christmas is December 25th. The Christmas season starts July 5th and goes to December 24th. If you take it, that's not really a religious holiday anymore. I mean, every year my wife and I always joke we go away because we're ashamed, but we go to, I love small town Christmas. We went to Natchitoches in Louisiana. We've been to Eureka Springs. We did the Norwegian Christmas in Clifton. And you take the religious part out of it, it really is a fun time of year. The caroling, you have the little small town parades, and you go to like the Adolphus parade. It's not fun downtown, but the little ones with the local high school and the mayor/car dealership owner waiting for a convertible. I took my parents to Grapevine last week. You've never been to Grapevine during Christmas. It really is a fun experience down there. So I guess it's not really a dilemma, I always tell my wife, we're not putting lights up in our house, we're not putting a Christmas tree in our house, but outside of it, yeah, it's pretty much Christmas season. And I love cheesy Christmas music. I guess I do have a slight dilemma with my older son. So he's been at Levine, we've never really had an issue. But we did kind of have to talk with him several times that he knows Santa's not real, but please, please, please do not say anything to anybody else in his class because we don't want to be that parent whose kid ruined Christmas for everybody else. And he told us, he did talk about it on the playground with the other Jewish kids, but he didn't tell any Christian kids that Santa wasn't real.
So I have not had to deal with the December dilemma very much. I think it might be slightly naive, but in my world, when Christmas lights went up, it meant it was almost time for Hanukkah. It was a signal for that. So yes, it was a month-long time period, but it was a month-long leading up to Hanukkah. But also, I think the closest I've had with the dilemma, working at an advertising agency where Christmas is such a key part of a lot of brands' campaigns, I've actually spent the past several months working on a Christmas campaign for Hobby Lobby. And so it's been interesting to be really deep into the culture and all of that, and seeing all of that. definitely I'm an anomaly on that account, but they did promise me that there is at least one end cap that has Hanukkah decor, and in the Northeast, there's two, so they do have Hanukkah decor.
You don't have anything to say on that? Okay. Joe?
We didn't really have a Christmas dilemma. It was just, they had theirs and we had ours, and that was the way it is. Of course, when you're surrounded by mostly non-Jewish people, you kind of do to fit in. In fact, Susan is from Waco, and she was married in the Christmas play. So you got to fit in where you're from and how you're living.
You make a lovely marriage. Lovely. Were you pregnant at the time?
I do have to add one thing to my Christmas story I meant to say. So a couple of years ago, we did take my older one to Nacogdoches for the Christmas there. They have the nighttime Christmas parade and trains and everything. So our hotel we were staying at was right next to the church, and we were well waiting for the parade, and they started doing a play outside the church. And it was the whole nativity play and everything, so he started asking questions, so we told him that was Moses. And he asked the other people, we're like, well, they're the camels, and I mean, and he starts asking, it's Moses and the camels and the sons and everything else he learned at Levine. We're like, yeah, that's just what it is. Let's just go ahead there. He bought it.
The next question you've probably answered, but if any of you have additional information that you would like to share, what have you taken from your youth and educational experiences that have impacted your life? So, let's see. Joe, David, I'm going to let you begin with you because you wouldn't answer the last one.
I took my confirmation, I took a bar mitzvah, confirmation, graduation, Eagle Scout from my youth, took some fantastic familial relationships. You know, in this big city I come back to, it was very Jewish for me, you know, based on any and all that were around us, and it seems like my wife and I, we've landed in homes, the same thing. We've got fantastic friends, I show. You know, Jewish friends that live all around us, and I guess that's maybe inbred in us, but that's, you know, David Goldman, Dallas Jew.
I don't know if this really answers the question. I would just say I'm not sure I really truly appreciated everything I had when I, was growing up. But in hindsight, so many of us that grew up here actually ended up here as adults. And it's wonderful to have new friends, but there's really nothing like having friends that you grew up with that have known you your whole life. It's very special. So that's all I have.
Excuse me, May.
I was always very interested in religion and interfaith. I had a lot of non-Jewish friends, as well as Jewish friends, of course. I enjoyed learning from Rabbis Owen and Klein during my confirmation year, and this carried over into college. I was a liberal arts graduate from Northwestern, but took a lot of courses from the Rabbi Hillel there. And in my adult life, I've taken many educational courses, and 3 years ago I became an adult bat mitzvah, and just do as much as I can in the Jewish community.
Joe?
Well, as you've heard before, growing up here and friends that are still my friends today, and it was very, very important, and I only look back on great memories that I have, and memories of the present day and over the years. And it's really, really nice, and it's just very special kind of way to grow up here.
So yeah, a lot of people have hit on it, but just growing up here and those relationships and friendships that I've had that are still around today and are still my closest friends, just being able to, you know, grow up my entire life here and come back after college and being able to keep that legacy building. It's really cool when I go to different places in Dallas or, you know, read different articles that my mom does through genealogy and seeing how rich my family is rooted here and how much of a part of the community they've been, to use that as inspiration to keep building on and continue that.
From my youth, I acquired something very, very valuable that I got through my connections to the Jewish community. And I've never had to use it before, but it's something I have in case I ever need it. If I ever lose my job, things get really bad. Thanks to my 5 years at Camp High and Laura Seymour's promise, I have a guaranteed job as a junior counselor. My whole 28 cents an hour.
Good. $5.
And the last question. Where do you see the Jewish community going in the future, and what is our greatest challenge? Not an easy one, but an interesting one. Let's see. Joe, you want to start us off?
Hopefully, the Jewish community will only strengthen itself, and if we've noticed, there are many which wasn't here when I was growing up. Although Goodis Hakim and Sheretz Israel and Tiferes Israel were all semi-Orthodox at one time, the growth of the Orthodox community here is outstanding. The more the better, and I just see nothing but good things in the future in the Dallas Jewish community.
I believe the Jewish community will continue to thrive as our various congregations are much more collaborative than they used to be. There is a lot of sharing of programs and resources, and I do recall as I was growing up here when there was Temple, Sheretz, Tiferet, and Agudas Achim, people didn't really, at that time, the kids may have socialized because they belonged to BBG or AZ or whatever, but the adults really did not. And the institutions themselves did not get involved with one another. And so I think that is, you know, one of the reasons we're going to keep going and being stronger and stronger is because of all of the interactivity among the synagogues here.
So I'm listening to May talk, and I see my father and my mother-in-law both shaking their heads up and down, so I don't know how to top that. But I've got two daughters.
Tell them the difference.
I've got two daughters, so maybe a Jewish husband or something.
Tell them where your father goes, where your mother-in-law goes.
Oh, so my mother-in-law, she spent 25 years as the program director at Temple Emmanuel, so deeply embedded there. And, you know, my father, no doubt about it, my wife and I, we do joke about that, being intermarried. That's not allowed, may seem right, okay? But,
Absolutely.
and, you know, my family grew up at Sheretz Israel for a long time, so when we got married, you know, generally one rabbi is enough. We had to have 4 of them.
That's true.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so as Dallas gets bigger and continues to grow, I see the same thing happening for the Jewish community. The thing about the Jewish community is it's very spread out geographically now, whereas it was not as much. I remember when we were kids, my dad would drive up to Lake Dallas, which is what it used to be called, We do go straight out Preston, and once you got to Beltline, there was nothing. It was all farmland. And now it's just one continuous, strip malls and everything, all the way out to Frisco. And I think on a communal level, how do our communal agencies deal with that geographic distance? I know Federation has this new department, what's it called? Community Engagement. Peter Solansky's in charge of that. And I think they're trying to deal with that. And at the JCC, they have this J on Wheels to take programs outside of this area here. So I think we, as a community, we have to be innovative to try and keep all the parts sort of running together or in communication with each other. Like May says, the synagogues work together, but maybe not the ones way out. They're not as involved necessarily with, Temple Emmanuel or Sheriff Israel. And so we have to keep that in mind. And I do think also this rabbinical council, I don't know how long it's been in existence, but a long time. I think that also is very helpful. 40 years? Yeah, I think it's very helpful on keeping the community sort of connected with one another.
So I was a BBYO advisor for probably 5 years actually, and Facebook was big at the time, and a lot of kids added me as friends on Facebook, whether they're in a BBYO or after college. So I've kept up with people throughout the years, either directly or at least see what they're up to, and it is interesting to watch because there are people out there that were active leaders in the Jewish community in high school that have gone on and stayed involved and joined synagogues, and then there's a lot of them out there that have nothing to do with Jewish stuff anymore. I mean, you see they had a wedding on a Saturday afternoon with a priest, and I don't know the answer, honestly. I mean, you see it both ways, and I guess it really could go either way. There's people that were heavily involved in their youth, and then they just decide they don't want to be, I don't want to say not Jewish anymore, they don't want to be anything anymore, and just, I hate to give a morbid answer, I don't know the answer in the future. You see a lot of people going different ways.
Can I make a comment about that? Our biggest challenge is addressing the unaffiliated Jews and trying to turn them into affiliated Jews. And toward that end, our doors have to be open. Our tents have to be wide to attract people of all colors and stripes and beliefs and non-beliefs, and having the kind of programming and services that are going to attract them to keep the community vibrant.
I do think to add on to both of those things, what I'm hopeful about is that I think anyone, especially anyone that's grown up here, there's always going to be that sense of belonging to the Jewish community. And I've seen what you said. I have plenty of friends in my life. There are people that were involved their entire life, and now they have, I would say, a really strong sense of belonging to the Jewish community, but they might not be involved necessarily. And I think, so some background, I work in social media, and then there's a lot of negative things out there, but I think there's a lot of pros too, and its ability to connect people and get them all involved. So being able to connect with the younger generations that way. And I think also being able to cater to them, what their strengths are. So again, growing up, it was it still is easy to get involved, but the opportunities came right to you. People asked you to sign up for this position or do that thing in your school or in PBYO or things like that. And as you get older and you come back, there's, you're not balancing work, you're maybe balancing kids, there's a lot of different things going on. But I think there's a lot of strengths that the younger generation have in ways that they can help out, like things like social media or video editing, different skill sets that they can bring to the table, and finding opportunities to bring them in that way, I think is a really interesting way to appeal to them and to keep them involved by helping do what they do best.
To our panelists, to our knights, thank you very much. Are there any questions, Deborah, that we have? Oh, we have a few.
First of all, my pens won't work, so I couldn't write down the questions.
Well, that is no excuse. Come on.
No,
Come on.
I was looking at the panel, and they're all of course, a wide age range, but basically, they were all born past World War II.
And I know my own experience growing up, we were very involved with the issues of the Holocaust. Do you ever have some negative feelings about being Jewish because of the Holocaust or because of what happened when Kennedy was assassinated and Jack Ruby was a Jewish name? Do any of those things impinge on you? Nothing. That's so interesting. Your parents did not talk about the Holocaust because they wouldn't.
Can you repeat that a little?
Yes, the question is, Ilya was saying that most of our panelists, if not all, were did not live through World War II. And how do they feel that do they have any feelings at all, and negative feelings regarding from the Holocaust, from the fact that Kennedy died here? So there are lots of things that have happened in Dallas that were not part of the pretty story that we like to tell. And if that had any influence on you at all.
Yeah, so, okay, so for me, I think no negative. My wife went on the second March of the Living, and as part of Yavna, you know, the children, they go on the March of the Living. So I think a very positive result of that is that my daughter had the opportunity to go on the March of the Living. She developed a fantastically wonderful, actually predating the March of the Living, relationship with Max Glauben. And she went to a school, she selected the school that she went to because they have a concentration in Holocaust and genocide studies. And that's what I have for the Holocaust. Macy, double thumbs up.
Well, as difficult as it may be to understand, but I did grow up during World War II. And I remember my father was an air raid warden here. I remember being very rah-rah American. And I think that we did know what was going on in Germany, or during the Holocaust, although thankfully we lost no family. But my parents brought over a young German refugee girl during that time, and she was very lucky to get here. I'm not sure how she did, but it was during the war. And she was very ungrateful. She lived with us, but she was very ungrateful. And I know that we had saved her, had probably saved her life. I'm not sure how my parents brought her over here, but they did. But I do remember being aware, to the extent any of us knew exactly what was going on there. I mean, that was part of my life during World War II.
Any other questions? Yes.
It's not a question, a comment. It's very interesting. This panel of 6 people, and most of the Jewish community lives and works in North Dallas, you know, since after World War II, so to speak. There's 3 people on that panel, though. It's interesting. Our son David, Miss Elizabeth Leaner, and Mr. Shackman. Liz's father was raised, we lived in Oak Cliff. I knew 7 Jewish families, or maybe a few more, not too many. And Liz's family lived about 2 doors from where I was raised. And Liz's father and grandfather rest in peace. And Joe's father and my father rest in peace. And I all worked in Oak Cliff within a mile of each other. So 3 Oak Cliff families, more or less, all worked in Oak Cliff, and there were no Jews out there. Now I think it's
Exactly.
right?
No alcohol.
Doctors.
Yes.
That was interesting. 3 of them.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Yes.
So Joe mentioned about his bar mitzvah being the last one at the old Sheriff of Israel. But he did not mention, which I remember, was his father and my father grew up together. And the day of his bar mitzvah was an ice storm.
An ice storm.
And my parents had to navigate to get down. We must go, they said, to the bar mitzvah.
Ice storm.
And that was his famous bar mitzvah. He didn't even mention that part.
Well, the ice storm. Well, it was also Zella Sobel's coming out party as a Jewish caterer. And somehow all the food was down there. And I was very much honored. Hillel Silverman was the rabbi then. He became rabbi to the stars. He would be introduced on the Johnny Carson show constantly. And his father happened to be visiting him in Dallas and gave the speech and all, and he wrote the books, the prayer books, and it was great. He gave the a sermon in my bar mitzvah. So.
Rabbi was that?
Rabbi Silverman, Hillel Silverman was the son, and then his father, he wrote the prayer book. Yeah.
Joe, this is just a real quickie. Liz, you alluded to this, but anybody can answer. You mentioned that a lot of your friends came back here from wherever they went to college or wherever they were doing. Every single one of my friends except one, who she's in New York now and now she's overseas, came back to Dallas, Texas, from wherever we went to college. My question is, what do you think, why do you think that is? What special reason is pulling people back here, no matter what, back to Dallas to be with their friends and whatever?
Jobs.
The job situation.
I mean, I don't know if it's jobs. I have friends from college that were from small town, South Texas, Jewish people. None of those kids, none of them, that either went back to Houston, they went to Dallas, they went to Austin. So I do think the fact that we have such a good job market here and such a strong Jewish community is a big draw for people to come here.
Because it's unusual. You do not find that in other cities. But Dallas is very special in that regard.
I think it's also,
And I came from someplace else. I found the Jewish community here was amazing. And I came in '52. You know, you were all the little ones. But it was really an eye-opener to me. I didn't think a Jewish life existed outside of the Northeast, you know. And suddenly I found a very vibrant, close, warm community. It was amazing. It really was.
so yeah, I think part of it is also just family, that sense of community. I think actually almost, I think all of my friends have come back since college here, and it was interesting because I remember us talking about it even before we went to college and when we were in college, it was never a question whether we would come back here. Like, I don't think anyone even looked anywhere else. There were a few of them where maybe they got a job offer and they went somewhere for a little bit, but they are all back here. I don't think any of them ever even planned to not come back.
So are my 4 children who were born here.
Yes, Renee.
You know, the interesting thing, which is a phenomenon, that's in 1975, about 75% of the Dallas Jewish community was affiliated. In about 2000, it went down to 50%. And I don't know, and I haven't kept track of it. While that, yeah, I'm sure it's right. But if you looked in 1975, maybe the affiliation rate in Los Angeles was about 17%. So that, for whatever reason, I mean, I have my own suspicions about it, but that's what kept this Jewish community so strong, is it had, people were really surprised at the high affiliation right here. It's still higher than most other places.
It's amazing.
It is amazing, it is amazing.
Well, they offer so much. The different synagogues and temples.
Yes, Sarah.
The emphasis is on programming. And it's there for you if you avail yourself.
It's what's happening north that concerns us all, because there's a whole other community out there that's not coming this way, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge.
Why do you consider it a challenge, though? Because there's a lot to do in the north, and there's opportunities in the north that aren't. We have a question in the back. Yes, Byron.
I was going to throw out the thing they forgot that all people did at Christmas time, and that is drive downtown and look at the window display.
Yes. Drive to Highland Park.
Where you still go to
Yeah.
My wife was the chairman
Y'all
of
never
that.
seen that house on Druid? Oh, yeah, that's the talismans.
And my aunt was the first person
Right.
Do the
married
talismans go to
at
your school?
Sheriff Israel on Harwood, and Janice's cousin was the first bat mitzvah in Texas, and my cousin was the second. And so we got married. It was Weinbergers and all the Anglers families, huge.
Yes.
And I don't know how giving everybody advice.
Barbara Jean was one of the first bat mitzvahs.
She's my cousin.
I know, I helped walk her down the aisle. That's what you did for bat mitzvahs then?
And wasn't she active
Yeah.
in this, in the historical?
Well, yes,
It was in the Holocaust.
yeah, Holocaust, it was a Holocaust, yeah. No, and when we first had bat mitzvahs, Barbara Jean, my best friend, was the second bat mitzvah there. And there were three of us. There was Barbara Jean, and there was myself, and Marta Ungerman, of blessed memory, and Barbara Jean as well. And our bat mitzvah consisted of walking down the aisle, going on the bima on Friday night only. And what did we get to do? We got to read the prayer for the sick. That was what we got to do, and that was our bat mitzvah. Okay.
Andrea, I can top Joe because I'm a lot older, but I have been blessed with the first air-conditioned bar mitzvah in church.
Everybody must have loved coming.
1945. You can remember those who went to the old Sheraton Park in Eakin, and probably Temple in those days. There was no air conditioning. You sit there in the high holy days.
And everyone dressed in their woolen clothes. Diane, you had a question?
Well, this has been a real treat for me because I know so many of the people and their families, and it's been a real treat to listen to all of you, your bar mitzvahs, your weddings, and so forth. But I've been here now 50 years, and having recently been president of B'nai Zion, I've noticed that we have just about every organization, every Jewish organization is represented here in Dallas, Texas. And it's just amazing. So there certainly is opportunity to be Jewish here and to feel Jewish and affiliated. And the synagogues, and it's just wonderful the way the community, the Jewish community has grown. And people who come here, you know, as a realtor, Marilyn and I, and we just love immediately to share with new people the Jewish community and all the wonderful things in the JCC, of course. But it's amazing because we had recently a function, and people wondered, why didn't we go over so well? And I said, well, because we like local talent here. And Texas and Dallasites are very, well, narcissistic or chauvinistic about the city. And it took me about 30 years of living here before I finally started saying, we do things differently down here. And that's a fact. That's a fact. There's no question about it, that people who live here in Dallas, many like the times born here, who do things differently down here, and I think it's a real plus.
Thank you very much. Thank you.